Welcome back to Dominate Your Day. I want to start this week with a story about a man named Admiral James Stockdale. You've probably heard of him. He was a prisoner of war back in the Vietnam War. He was actually a prisoner for 7 years. I want you guys to think about this: 7 years with no release date, no certainty he'd even survive the week, let alone the war. And here's the part that gets me every time I think about it. He never stopped working on himself the entire time he was in that cell. Most of the other POWs were thinking about when they could get out during the next holiday. And he was really talking to himself about, well, it could be Christmas, it could be Easter, it could be next Thanksgiving. But he didn't hold his hat on that because he knew that if he was let down, it would be even harder on him. So he built this resistance and this persistence and an amazing resiliency to manage himself. I want you to sit with that for a second, because most of us are waiting on something right now that is nowhere near that severe. And we're handling it worse than he handled 7 years with no end date. So here's my question for you today. What are you waiting on right now that you don't control the timeline for? Is it a decision? Maybe a promotion? Perhaps you're going through a reorg like a lot of my clients. Or someone else's choice about your future. And this is the real question. What have you quietly stopped doing while you wait? Most people think waiting is neutral, like it's just dead time, a blank space between now and when the real thing starts. It's not neutral. There are two completely different ways to wait, and most leaders default into the wrong one without ever noticing they made a choice. I call the first one passive waiting. Passive waiting has a very specific feeling to it. It's repetition. It's the same, still waiting to hear, feeling week after week. No new information, no new questions. You're still showing up to work, still doing your job on the surface, but that internal work, the growing, the building, the thinking, that's stalled. Waiting for someone else to move first. If you've been in that place for more than a couple of weeks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to someone who isn't in it. Because from the outside, it looks like nothing's happening. But from the inside, it's costing you everything. Here's the other way to wait. And it's the one Stockdale somehow found in a cell with no training, no psychology, and no book on resilience to read. I call it active waiting. Active waiting has a pulse, yet you set a small checkpoint for yourself, not for when the big thing resolves, but for something you control. You're still gathering new information, still doing new thinking every week, even though the big answer hasn't come. Here's the distinction in one sentence. You don't control the timeline, but you control how you show up, especially inside the situation. And I want to point out something about Stockdale specifically. He had zero authority in that prison cell, none. And he still waited better than most leaders wait in a comfortable office with a salary and a title and every resource they could possibly need. Authority was never the variable. The posture was. So how do you do this? I want to give you 4 questions because waiting shows up differently depending on what part of your work it's touching. If it's about what you're building, your projects, your output, the question is, what's mine to build right now, even if it's small? If it's about your people, your team, your relationships, the question is, who needs me to show up steadily while things are uncertain? If it's about how you're leading and influencing others, the question is, how do I keep energy and hope alive without performing it? And if it's about the bigger picture where all this is headed, the question is, what am I learning in this season that I couldn't learn if things were moving fast? Notice which one of those 4 hit hardest just now. That's usually the one you need. So here's what I want you to do today. Just one thing. Just notice whether you're in active waiting or passive waiting, about whatever it is you're sitting with right now. Don't fix it yet. Don't force yourself into active mode if you're not there. Just notice which one you're actually in. That noticing is the whole practice to start. Everything else builds from there. And if that's what you're noticing, and if what you're noticing isn't just in you, if you're watching the same passive waiting posture spread across your leadership team right now, that's exactly the pattern the executive leadership diagnostic is built to find. If that's where you are, let's talk. There's a link in the show notes.